Please sit down. Toma la palabra el señor Nicholas Stern, presidente del Instituto Grantham de Investigación sobre el Cambio Climático y el Medio Ambiente. Now welcome Lord Nicholas Stern, President of the Grantham Research Institute on Climate Change and Environment, who will be moderating this session.
Thank you, Mr. President, for being with us today. It means a great deal, the way in which you've been involved in all this, the support you've given, the leadership you've given throughout. So thank you so much for being with us. And thank you all for coming, and thank you to the task force that we're going to hear from that's done such good work. Let me take a couple of minutes at the beginning to outline the issues that we face. You're going to have it from the point of view of an economist, so you have to bear with me. First, we have to start by understanding that green growth is the only option for growth that's available. The alternative, to go on as we are, is to create something so destructive as to undermine the future prospects for growth. So there isn't a choice between different forms of growth. This is the only one that makes sense. Second, it can and must take a form that empowers poor people. This is a development story as well as a growth story. Third, we have to understand the scale that we're dealing with. We have to cut emissions per unit of output as a world by a factor of 8. We have to divide by 8 in the next 40 years. That's an energy industrial revolution. Like other industrial revolutions, it has to be driven by private sector investment. It brings investment and innovation lasting 2 or 3 decades or more. But this one is different. This one needs policy. It has to be guided by a policy which overcomes the market failures. These are market failures which obstruct change, and they have to be dealt with by public policy. To fail to correct market failures is to distort markets. So this is a growth story and it's a market story. We're going to hear about the market failures through the task force. And there are a number of important ones. There's the one we're most familiar with, which is the failure to price carbon, the greenhouse gas market failure. That's the first and fundamental one. And we can at least stop subsidizing pollutants and then start to tax them or have a proper price. But it's more than that. Secondly, it's research and development does require a policy framework. Networks, thirdly, are crucial. Electricity grids, public transport, and so on. A fourth area where markets fail, of course, is long-term risk capital markets. A fifth area is information, and this is an area where change is taking place very rapidly, and information is crucial. And sixth, there's so many unpriced benefits like biodiversity, energy security, and so on. So it's not just one market failure. It's a collection of market failures that impede the private investment, and it's overcoming those market failures that is at the heart of policy and what the task force studied. So with that introduction as to what we're talking about, we would like to understand the work of the task force. And so I'm going to hand first to Detlef Engel, who is the President and CEO of Vestas Wind Systems, and then he will hand to Fulvio Conti, who's the CEO and General Manager of Enel. And they were our task force co-chairs, and we're enormously grateful to them for the outstanding work that they have done. So Detlef, please.
Thank you very much. President Calderón, ministers, distinguished guests, dear colleagues. These remarks will be very brief, so let me say to you, Mr. President, on behalf of the 2012 B20 Task Force Growth Group, we are extremely grateful for your leadership and inspired by your participation here today. Our task force consists of 25 CEOs, chairmen and organizational heads from different economic sectors. And many of our task force colleagues are here today, so welcome and a special thanks to you as well. Each of us is here because we believe that greening the economy and growing the economy do go hand in hand. That in the long run, we cannot have one without the other. Greening the economy is all about creating the greatest possible economic results while using the fewest possible resources, and using those resources in the most sustainable way possible. And we know that growing the economy requires government and business to play their different but mutual reinforcing roles. Governments have to create policy frameworks that rebalance economic incentives to clearly favor green investments. With the right policy framework, business will make the investments, take the risk, and create the new business opportunities that the green economic transformation promises. Countries like Mexico, Korea, and Denmark are making good progress with, like, for instance, the 3GF. But collectively, the problem is that none of us are moving fast enough. In April, the IEA Executive Director warned that our current path could lead to temperature increases of at least 6 degrees before 2100. A 6 degree would be a grim future indeed. The good news is we can change the path we're on, and that is precisely why we are here to share with you, Mr. President, and with your G20 colleagues, the policy roadmap that we know will work. Concretely, we urge the G20 to focus on 5 main policy areas. Number 1, green energy free trade. We are asking the G20 leaders to initiate negotiations to achieve a sustainable energy trade agreement that will eliminate tariff and non-tariff trade barriers, including local content requirements. Number 2, carbon pricing. We need G20 countries to implement carbon pricing policies supported by ambitious emission reduction targets. And we are urging the G20, together with business and international organizations, to develop pilot programs to test new market mechanisms. Number 3, end and redirect fossil fuel subsidies. G20 countries should end fossil fuel subsidies and other inefficient forms of support for the exploration, production, and consumption of fossil fuels within 4 years. And we urge the G20 to redirect a portion of these subsidies to ensure energy access for the poor and to support green infrastructure investments. Number 4, accelerate low-carbon innovation. Innovation being central to the green transformation, the G20 should use some of the revenues from carbon pricing measures to increase support for research, development, demonstration, and pre-commercial deployment of low-carbon technologies. Number 5, target public funding to leverage private investments. I will not elaborate here, as my colleague Mr. Conti will say more about this in a moment. But here is the bottom line. Achieving this economy-wide transformation requires annual infrastructure investments of about $2 trillion. Today, $1 trillion are being invested annually. Precisely this issue of financing the low-carbon economy has been a constant focus for our task force this year. And to highlight our approach, I would now like to turn over to my task force co-chairman, Mr. Conti, CEO and General Manager of Enel. Thank you.
Thank you, Luke.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Ditlev. Mr. President, you heard the 5 proposals that we are putting forward to the G20 leaders. We're advocating these recommendations. But although the recommendations are very important to us, we felt, in elaborating it, that we missed an action tool. A tool that will rise as the vehicle for the private sector to collaborate with the policy community on tangible projects. A tool that would collaborate with different bodies to rationalize and harmonize the different initiatives already in place. As business leaders, we are pragmatic. We know that a plan must be followed by an implementation strategy. Green growth cannot be overshadowed by the economic crisis. It is a crucial strategy for the future competitiveness of each country. Therefore, by promoting best practices in converging public and private financing, we are presenting a new tool that aims to boost growth and competitiveness. I'm proud to announce the launch of the Green Growth Action Alliances, the G2A2. This is a new public-private coalition of business and international organizations to advance innovative approaches to financing green growth. And I would like to warmly thank you, President Calderón, for your endorsement of this initiative. G2A2 members, we collaborate on a voluntary basis to set the strategic direction. They will provide time and resources to carry out specific activities. The first need we will try to address with the Alliance is to blend private and public finance to boost investments. We believe this is a field that has to improve dramatically to further leverage private and public finance for green growth investments. We will collect and document successful examples of innovative financing models. We will implement them into the different initiatives, such as the design of the Green Climate Fund private sector facility. We will work with governments and multilateral organizations to ensure that leveraging private financing is embedded in public policies. Another important issue we will tackle will be to propose policy intervention that will deliver clear price signals to allow for private investments. When governments adopt the right policy and framework for these policies, they create the conditions for business to embrace the new green growth opportunities. The Alliance will advocate specific action to incentivize investments in the 5 key areas already highlighted by Mr. Engel. During the next 3 years, we will watch closely government's work on all these matters. We will monitor, track, and progress and report back to subsequent G20 events. The Alliance will not generate another bureaucracy. On the contrary, we want to be the catalyst for rationalizing, harmonizing, and scaling of the many existing international programs, instead of creating new ones. The more we will streamline and unify, the more we will achieve. As you can see from the slide appended on the screen, we will evaluate, facilitate, build, pilot, and pledge. As a flexible partnership for action, we will seek for productive opportunities to engage with financial institutions, the G20, and the national policy makers. Today, almost 50 companies and institutions, public and private, and research organizations have already confirmed their participation in this important initiative. May I now ask my fellow CEOs, task force member to stand up. Would you please stand up, please? I think you deserve a round of applause for the work you've done. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your collaboration and engagement. President Calderón, we are certain that you can make a difference in making G2A2 a successful endeavor. We would be delighted if you could provide your leadership to our initiative. More than that, Mr. President, it would be a great pleasure for us and a big honor, and I can express the sentiment of all the members of the team, to ask you to become our chairman, our honorary chairman and president. Mr. President, would you like to accept the role as a Green Growth Action Alliance presidency?
Thank you, Professor. Well, I want to say yes.
Bravo, bravo.
Thank you. Well, let me tell you that first, it's a great pleasure to be with you today in this V20 meeting, and in particular in this Green Growth panel, a topic which is of great importance for the international agenda and of great importance for me. So thank you for your invitation, and in particular, thank you for your invitation to collaborate with this Green Growth Agenda, Green Growth Alliance, Action Alliance, in which I do believe. So if I can do anything in order to collaborate with you, it would be a pleasure. Actually, I'm going to be very busy in the next month, but after that, I could work a little bit more about that. Well, I do believe in that, I say it, and so I accept that the extension and responsibility, I accept that with the commitment to promote a clear agenda in order to make compatible business agenda with green agenda. I think it's the key for the future. As Mr. Lord Stern was saying, the green growth is the only growth we can promote. And I liked that expression about that. In order to do that, we need some kind of a new industrial revolution. I agree with that. So environmental issues, and in particular tackling climate change and fighting for a better future, is one of my passions. So in that sense, if I can do anything that could be useful for that purposes, you can count on me. My reflections in the topics that you were mentioning is, well, let me say that first, I received with a lot of interest the 5 conclusions about that, and I agree on that. Maybe I want to build on top on that and make some comments. I like the idea of make a green energy free trade, because I like the green issues, but I believe in trade as well. Trade is the only way in which we can generate jobs, economic growth, and probably is the most important alternative we need to put in place as G20 leaders to recover economic growth in the world. And if we can establish free trade in terms of energy, and in particular free trades in terms of green energy, would be great. So I do believe in that. Talking about carbon pricing, and in particular ending fossil fuel subsidies, I think, which is the most important task we have and the most difficult one. I can see it, unfortunately, even today in the elections in several countries. I don't want to talk about Mexico right now, but it's very easy for candidates to promise cheaper prices on carbon and fossil fuels. It's very easy to promise cheaper gasoline, cheaper electricity, despite the fact that one of the crucial problems we have in public policy is how to end, even in a gradual manner, these fossil fuels, the subsidies. And so it would be a very important task for this Green Growth Action Alliance. How do you say that? The G2A2? I like it. I don't like the acronyms very much, but it could work anyway. The other, the low carbon economy innovation. So it could be a very important task for governments and civil society and businessmen. So because my idea about this is it is questions about economic incentives and a low carbon innovation. Actually, to invest in innovation and technology is crucial for any economic development, and in particular in this field, it's very important. And finally, how to leverage, how to grace private and public funds in order to promote that is crucial. One of the issues that we used to talk about it is, in order to promote green growth, there is necessary a lot of money, too much money. But the paradox is that we have a lot of money today. I mean, if you analyze the performance of the behavior of some sovereign funds or pension funds, insurance funds and so on, there is a lot of money in the world. And that money is looking for profitable long-term projects. And in terms of green economy, in terms of green growth, there are a lot very profitable projects that could receive such amount of money. And the issue that we need to fix, or we need to design, is how to match this tremendous amount of money, which is at the very end are long-term liabilities, pension funds, for instance, how to match that with long-term assets in this particular term, for instance, wind farms and others, or infrastructure for low carbon economy. If we are able to match long-term projects for green economy with long-term liabilities like pension funds, we will be able to raise that money and we will be able to finance the green growth economy. So it's a pleasure for me to participate today and to receive the conclusions of this very active and very important working group in the V20. That's some additional comments that I had prepared regarding the key role of this Green Growth Action Alliance. I want to invite all the businessmen community. I want to invite all the enterprises involved in energy issues, but also involved in economic growth. We need to work together. We as government, in particular all those economies suffering terrible economic problems, it's difficult, I need to say, to address directly those issues. But if we are able to promote and to push enough the leadership in each country, we will be able to start probably, I don't know, I would like to say that, but it is probably to start right now here in the G20 or probably very soon a new era in terms of green economy. The intention of the group, the intention of this Green Growth Initiative or Green Growth Action Alliance is absolutely necessary for the purposes of the future. I'm really sorry to say this, but I'm not seeing right now in the governments, among the members of the G20 or other leaders in the world, at least the political leverage to take the initiative for the green growth. But what I am seeing, and I'm really happy to that, I'm seeing here in the room, there is enough power in private sector and business community to promote the green growth. And not to promote green growth like charity or something like that. To promote green growth as a real business. I remember very well, and I want to end my reflections with some comments I made some months ago in Cannes. Where do we need to start the green growth route? Probably it is very useful to see some of the analysis made, I think by McKinsey, in which they analyze all those sources of energy that not only are necessary, but also they have some kind of positive net present value. In other words, changes that are profitable, changes in the green growth economy that are very good businesses. And it is important to see that. I wonder if you have the graph right now, and it is possible to see. Maybe you can see the potential base in a carbon cost. You can see in the left side of the graph all those public policies or policy measures that are not only good for the environment but also very profitable. You can see, for instance, changing some lamps or using some changes in electronics in residential, or switching from the traditional lamps for light lamps for LEDs, for instance, in residences. You can see all those measures that could be not only good for the environment, but also very good business. What the graph is saying is all those policy measures below the horizontal line they have a positive net present value, which means they are very good business, very profitable. And on the other hand, in the right side of the graph, you can see some public policy measures that are not exactly profitable in economic terms, but they're very good for the society, and in any case are good in order to reduce carbon emission. And you can see carbon capture storage there, some public transportation system, some public policies related with forestation and so on. So my point is, if the question is how can we start a new green growth economy? We need to start, in particular in this very difficult moment for the economic of the world, by the left side of this graph. So we need to promote all those measures that are not only good for the environment and for carbon emission reduction, but also very good business. And any enterprise, any company familiar with this could make a lot of money and providing a lot of services for the community and generating a lot of jobs. So if you take one of these cogeneration, for instance, changing appliances in residences or homes in any country, that kind of measures are good for the environment and are, at the same time generate jobs and at the same time are very profitable. Let me use one example that we are doing in Mexico, an example I like to use very much, which is we started in the middle of the crisis when the economy went down in 2009 by almost 10% in the second quarter of 2009. And our export industry went down dramatically due to the performance of the American economy. We established a quite interesting program to support the industry of appliances, refrigerators and others. So we started a program in which the government financed the substitutions of appliances, mainly refrigerators and air-conditioned equipment. So we take the old equipment in the residence or in the homes of the people, especially poor people, and destroy it in an adequate way that old refrigerator, and finance and in some cases even subsidize the new refrigerator for the families. And with that we are saving money for the families, and in some cases in which the electricity is subsidized still, we save money for the government and we save carbon for the environment. By the way, in order to promote this program, the Secretary of Energy in Mexico designed a very complex and very technical name, which is Program for Substitution of All Appliances for a New One, Saving Energy Appliances. And the name was very complex, and I suggested to the Secretary, well, it looks very complex for the poor families. Let me suggest you a new name, a new branch for the program. So only to say for you that in Mexico, the wives used to talk to their husband as mi viejo, my old one. No? So the name of the program was Change Your Old One for a New One. So, cambia tu viejo por uno nuevo. No? And it was a real success. No? A lot of women were a little bit disappointed when they realized what exactly the program was, but at the very end, we have changed like 2 million refrigerators in 3 years. And it's a very profitable program for the government, a very good program. We rescue the industry and generate a lot of jobs, or preserve a lot of jobs in that industry specifically. And you can take this. So my final comments is, if we need to start in one way, we need to start in the left side of the graph. And for all those measures in the left side of the graph, what we need is institutional and legal framework, on one hand, and financing all those programs. That is possible. And we need to apply any single coin, any single cent to those programs. And when the economy could improve its performance, we can pass towards the right side of the graph, in which we will need legal and institutional framework, and probably in some cases, not only public policy, but also some kind of public subsidies. And I agree with the point in which we need to canalize the old subsidies to fossil fuels to some kind of economic incentives to the new green economy and renewable sources of energy. That it could be the idea, and that could be more or less the idea that could be behind this Green Growth Action Alliance that you are suggesting. And it would be a pleasure to me to contribute and to work together with you in this very ambitious plan. And I hope that we could start from the side of the businessmen a new era for the green economy that all here in this planet needs urgently. And we are going to work as soon as possible on that. So thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. President, for launching with Alejandro Ramirez this task force 5 or 6 months ago, and for your guidance during its work and for your reflections on the results of its work, and for agreeing to be, and it's on the record, honorary chair of the Global Green, the Green Growth Action Alliance. And we look forward to your leadership and guidance as it moves forward, recognizing your commitments, of course, particularly in the short term. So thank you so much for your leadership and guidance and your wise words today. Now, I'm reliably told that there will be a few totally spontaneous questions from the audience. And the first person who, these basically members of the task force, and the first person who I'd like to call on is Lars Thunell. If you could, obviously your name Lars Thunell, but if you could indicate where you come from. Lars, please, thank you.
Mr. President, my name is Lars Thunell. I head up the International Finance Corporation, the private sector arm of the World Bank. Let me start out by congratulating you and the task force to the recommendations. I think we from the IFC side very much support it, and obviously we are working very much in exactly this area which the task force is focusing in on in the fifth with innovative finance and how to blend private and public funds. And we have worked, for example, here with the first wind farm where in Mexico, where we combined the public and private money. But I would be very interested in your thoughts on, since you mentioned the sovereign wealth funds, and we are right now trying to set up a pilot fund together with the UK government, who's putting in £50 million, and we're putting in up to £75 million in a kind of fund of fund where we will try to have private equity managers focusing on the climate change opportunities. And if you think that is the type of things that we should move forward with, and in that case, if you have any ideas on how to scale this. So let me just finish with saying that we would be very, very happy to continue to support, and of course the Alliance for Action, I think, we would be very happy to work with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lars. Mr. President, would you like the questions together, or would you want to reply one by one, or should we put them together?
I would just suggest, Professor...
Okay. Let's put them together, and then there'll perhaps be some common themes. So, Stefan Opitz, please.
Yeah, Mr. President, I'm heading the KfW Development Bank. That's a German development bank, and we've also actively supported that group, and I would like to know how you see the role of development banks to accelerate green investment. You have talked about the challenge of financing green investments, and there are numerous development banks around the world, and one Mexican bank, the NAFIN, is also part of that group. So how do you see the role of development financing institutions in accelerating green investment?
Thank you. And a third is Pierre Nanterme.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. President, a question on this G2A2, this Green Growth Action Alliance. And do you believe that this kind of initiative could provide a sort of model in the context of the quite difficult negotiation in Rio on sustainable development and in putting together a global governance in that context, as we know that it's going to be difficult, and do we have something here that we can build on? I'm Pierre Lanterme, the CEO from Accenture.
Thank you, Pierre. Mr. President, could you kindly give your thoughts?
Well, it's a pleasure to see the interest of the development banks or institutions in this, and it's absolutely necessary. Probably what we need to do is to design some kind of a pilot program regarding how to establish the right economic incentives to promote this kind of activities. And I have no clear idea what can we do, but all my memories being director of Public Works Bank here in Mexico several years ago, we put in practice a quite interesting program, public-private program, in order to foster public works, railroads, and so on. The mechanism it used to be quite simple. Well, it's not simple, but it's more or less like this. We allocate some public funds in a specific fund, which we call it today the Fondo de Infrastructure Fund. The mechanism is to establish a set of project financing. So we detect, for instance, a highway to be built. We elaborate the project financing, and the idea is to detect the net present value, not only in economic terms, but in social terms as well. And once we detected quite important infrastructure project, we establish some kind of public bid in which we offer to finance, even subsidize, until like 40% of the total value of the project. To those companies interested on that, and we assign the project to that company who ask the less to the government. So we started to bid some highways in which, for instance, we needed to pay almost 40% of the project. But it's such kind of bids or licitaciones in Spanish. We started to reduce the cost for the government. And today, for instance, we bid highways projects in which we don't need to pay any single cent, but also we are receiving money to the infrastructure fund. And that could be a very similar mechanism that we could put in place for Green Growth Alliance. For instance, wind farms that you were saying. We can establish trying to use funds coming from development banks or other institutions, or the Green Fund we established in the COP16 here in Cancun. Probably we can start to allocate, if we detect an important project regarding, I think, a wind farm or any other biomass in some cities or whatever. The idea is to detect, isolated, the project financing and to establish a set of public funds coming from national or international funds and to bid to the companies interested on that. And probably we can start a set of project financing, green growth project financing. Now that could be a good start, and that will be very interesting. The participation of the World Bank, or the participation of any development bank in Germany or Mexico, United States, or whatever. I think it could be a quite interesting idea to promote in Rio this week. I'm not very familiar with the negotiation there. There is, I'm afraid that could be some kind of what I want to see in Rio, more pragmatical initiatives like this. If we can start to take another kind of summits and environmental issues, different from general purposes, general principles, different from blaming each other about what the world is so bad like this. And we start to promote some kind of, even like a business summit in which you present this or that project, and the community, business community, could be interested in finance or either participate on that. That could be the different kind of summit we need in order to foster this kind of project. I hope that Rio could show us a little bit about it.
you very much, Mr. President. The next outbreak of spontaneity is two further observations. And first I'd like to call on Peter Somsen from Siemens.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We're a member of the alliance you've just agreed to lead, and we're happy to follow you. We have a very simple point to make, but it's an important point, and that is that this is not a technology challenge. As we say in Germany, it's not a moonshot. A lot of things we can do. You very kindly visited our new headquarters in Mexico City and saw a building that uses 30% less energy than conventionally designed buildings, and that's just the start. At Siemens, we've been making electric drives, motors for 100 years. A lot of them are still in use. If you replace them with more efficient motors, you can take 70% of the energy use out. And this isn't a Siemens advertisement. There are lots of other companies that have got this technology. It is not a technology challenge. If we were to replace fossil fuel plants, not with new technologies, simply existing technologies, we can take out 2.5 gigatons of CO2, 5 times what Mexico produces now. So this is not a moonshot. It just takes a little bit of financing and will. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Peter. And if I could call on Bill Kruger from Nissan, please.
Good afternoon, Bill Kruger from Nissan. Hopefully you've had a chance to see technology in action with our zero-emission Nissan Leaf. And I think as a company, we have been, under our CEO's leadership, I believe, courageous to go out in front and invest billions of dollars in new technology. But probably it's on the right side of the chart as when we will see the return. And I would like to request how we can get consistent policies. There's policy making, but from country to country, how we can get consistency in those policies so that companies can, with limited complexity, deliver highly efficient green technology consistently across the globe.
Thank you very much. Could I ask whether President Calderón or any other Ditlev or Fulvio, if you have any reactions to these examples which we've just had? President,
yes, well, briefly, I like the projects of Siemens. I'm talking about the intelligent green buildings. I hope you could have the opportunity to see the building we made for this G20 in Los Cabos. It's very similar. Now the Siemens building is the most, the greenest in Mexico, if I can say that, but probably this one could be very close to that. That's, for instance, we are using the more natural light we could use in that building. And we have there, for instance, a set of thermal mechanisms in the walls of the building. And among those thermal mechanisms, it's a green wall. A green wall is like, you can see in the extreme of this room. So a set of plants, thousands of plants in the wall. And we made in Los Cabos, here in the convention center, G20 is the name, since yesterday, we made the largest green wall in the world. So it's amazing, it's beautiful, I like it so much, but we are saving a lot of energy. Despite the fact that we are in the desert, it is not necessary such amount of electricity for air-conditioned equipment and so on. So that is the idea. We can build innovative solutions, and this, on top of that, there are hundreds of solar cells in the convention center that, of course, are not those solar cells are not going to be enough to supply all the electricity that we are going to consume in one convention. However, if you consider the regular use of a convention center, like for instance 2 or 3 weeks per month, or a weekend per month, that solar cell system probably will be able to support at least 50% of the total electricity used by the convention center. So I'm very proud about that. And that is the kinds of the solution. And that convention center could generate, for instance, 2 million jobs, 2 million new visitors to Los Cabos in this side of the tourist industry, which is convention tourism. Well, that is one example. The other is, this is the kind of analysis we need to have. One is a company that could provide massive transportation system, which is the case of System. And this is a state-of-the-art company which could provide, as Nissan is doing, electricity vehicles or hybrid vehicles in a very efficient manner. That is the kind of decision that we need to take for the future. As long as we have only, for instance, fossil fuels, automotive, and we can evolve, and you are doing very well in that field, as long as we have only fossil fuel vehicles still, probably we need to promote a lot massive transportation system. And in that sense, I think that the investment that a lot of governments, local governments or some governments in the world promoting massive, not massive transportation, vehicle transportation, probably we are making some mistakes on that. In other words, the things that we need to promote is more massive transportation system instead of more infrastructure for more individual vehicles. But at the same time, if the automobile industry is able to produce more efficient cars, which is the case of Nissan and other companies, probably we will need public policies more oriented towards to provoke those changes in technology and industry. What could be those economic incentives to promote such changes in technology? I don't know, probably incentives like tax incentives, for instance, to eliminate taxes for these kind of vehicles, efficient vehicles, or to finance and subsidize the infrastructure to take electricity like we used to take gasoline today in a gas station. But it's a very impressive and very important road to walk, and we need to work together. The idea is that public policies could be designed by the government with the support of private companies, and at the same time that all together could be realized how important it is to make the more efficient decision according to the graph. In other words, if we can start from the left side, if we can use our scarce resources to promote all those measures that are more efficient, more profitable, and more positive net present value, we will be in the right track. We can start on the right side of the graph, but we will spend a lot of money, we will save a very few carbon emissions, and probably we are not going to generate the right signals to the society that it's possible to advance so much without paying a lot of money. That is the signal we need to provoke. Anyway, if one day we want to reach the right side of the graph, and that could be the goal for everybody, we need to start today to generate the economic incentives. And that could be the role of the government. Not to pay, as we are doing today, subsidies to fossil fuels, but pay some kind of economic incentives to move the technology to make cheaper the right side of the graph. In other words, one day we need to get to put below the line, the horizontal line, all that technology that today could be not as profitable like the other one. But it has a lot of social benefits. If we combine in the equation not only economic benefits, but also social benefits, we could take as public policy makers the right decision. That could be my impression.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Now, I'd like to ask Fulvio and Ditlev if they have any quick responses to what we've heard, and then we move to our closing remarks.
If I may, Mr. President, to complement what you just said, companies like ours, unfortunately, they need to work on both sides of the slides, because the time to market of the many projects that you have outlined is so long that if you don't start today, you will not be ready at the time when you need it. Just to follow the examples that both colleagues from Siemens and Nissan have been reporting on to us, we're working. My company, Enel, is working with Siemens and a very special project, which is the highly concentrated solar, the sun that runs electricity 24 hours a day and night. It's a dream, but it's working. It's a huge investment of ours. It's fully funded by us. It's negative today. It's costing a lot of the tens of millions of euros, but we believe that we need to promote that kind of technologies and create a solution for the desert over here, or the many places in Africa, or the many places in South America where you have land, sun, and you need electricity. And therefore we spending the money. We spend about 700 million euros on pure research in euros in 5 years, just some project on the right-hand side, because we already done most of the, in our markets, most of the left-hand side. I'm driving a Leaf. I'm driving personally a Leaf. It's a wonderful car. I'm not making this an advertisement. I do honestly believe this is a wonderful car. It has a couple of 100 kilometers of autonomy. It's silent. It doesn't pollute. It's a wonderful town car, and it's also spacious enough, like you would expect a car for a family. But the problem is here, and that's why we need you. We need your charisma. You need your supervision. Think about it this way. For the electrical vehicle in Europe, there are 2 plugs. The industry is working on 2 different plugs. And no one in Brussels can decide, again, one single plug for the entire industry. So unlike the plugs for the electricity, we're going to have the American, the Mexican, and the European, and the Japanese. This is not going to work. This is a point of us trying to be sensible, intelligent, and promote standardization of processes. And
what would be the best plug?
One would be the best.
European, the American, or what?
Well, I believe the Europeans are better, but,
that's good.
But that's maybe a prejudged position.
We're running out of time, Fulvio.
One single statement. I'm sorry to abuse about the time. We are honored you are accepting the presidency of our alliance. But you've seen the many financial institutions, supranational financial institutions, which are part of this alliance. You know what we need? We need, again, your charisma, Mr. President, to convince all of your colleagues, Prime Minister, Presidents, that they should give up on their individual projects and trying to collide and to merge all these projects, all of the different initiatives into a single one for the entire world. I mean, there is no point on going piecemeal. We need your support to convince all your colleagues to surrender and make it one single viable instrument.
Thank you, Fulvio. Dietler, very briefly, and then we have to move to closing remarks.
Yes, I'd just like to maybe convey a message that I hope the President will bring along for the upcoming discussions. And last week I was in London, and I spoke to some of the largest pension funds in the world about the future investments. Now, I come from the wind sector, and a few years ago, most of the question was running about the technology. But the most questions I got at that presentation was the regulatory risk. And therefore, I think a very important message to people who would like to grow their economies is that the regulatory uncertainty is the biggest barrier that we are faced with. And that is not, and I have also just to give you a reflection from our daily life, the way forward is not to keep on putting on more tariffs and barriers. That is absolutely the best way to make sure it does not happen. And I think that is a huge problem we are faced with, and the crisis is making these barriers more and more complicated, and that's really destroying the economy. It's not greening and growing it, it is doing just the opposite. So I really hope that we can have a competition for capital and investment, and that is by setting the right regulatory framework, because I fully agree with what you say, then the possibilities are there. And then I hope that you will convey a good old Chinese saying to everybody: please do not look at the waves, but look at the current.
Thank you very much, Dietler. Now, Mr. President, we've had a very thoughtful discussion under your leadership, and I hope that there's some very clear, indeed there are some very clear, strong messages for the leaders of the G20, and we have total faith in your ability to convey these messages very clearly. And I'd just like now to ask you if there are any closing thoughts that you'd like us to go away with?
Thank you. Just thank you all of you to visit Mexico. I would like to express my gratitude for this honor that you are considering for me. And of course we will work together. And I will say clearly the message for the leader of G20, and I will work together with the business community of this Alliance for Green Growth, and I hope that we can bring clear outcomes in the future. I think that your initiative, your acknowledge of the issues, as you were mentioning, the learning of the governments for me is very important, what you were saying about the regulatory framework, the barriers that you are facing. Everything is very useful. So thank you for your confidence in Mexico. We will work together and we will make it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Es así como damos por concluido este evento. Se despide de ustedes el ciudadano presidente de los Estados Unidos mexicanos, agradeciendo su amable asistencia. Que tengan un excelente día.